I just wanted to ask you if you could share some tips for women who are maybe struggling with the self-trust and maybe are
Yeah,
feeling confused about their careers.
I did finally take the time to do the application to get approved as a psychotherapist. It was a long process, but it made me realize this is my path. Like I'm so happy I did it. But yes, to go back to your question about women, and I love that you're asking me about women because there is a difference of women's lived experience in this world in comparison to men.
Mm.
And that is just the reality of like, we do live in a patriarchal world. And I think that that's important for us to just acknowledge.
Yeah.
Just acknowledge that that influences, has an impact on how we navigate the world as women. And it's so part of our society and the make of our day to day that we're not always aware of how much it impacts us. It might look like stop crying, stop being so emotional. It might be about work hard. Like I have so many clients who come to me and they're like, yes, but my boss is giving me all of these things to do and I feel overwhelmed and there's not enough time. A lot of people are so afraid to say no. They're so afraid that there's going to be a negative consequence. So they don't even allow themselves to find a way to even have that conversation. It is about reconnecting to yourself, but reconnecting to your power as a woman, reconnecting to the emotions. Like I find that the more that we allow ourselves to have the cry, express the anger. And when I say these things, it's not about like getting angry at the person who you feel like did you wrong or whatever. It's actually just finding time for yourself to fully express the anger or the disappointment or the sadness. Like really being in tune with your emotions actually makes you come alive. There is an aliveness in that, because if you're always like here thinking you're happy or thinking you're avoiding the sadness, this is just neutral. You're just coasting through life. But if you let yourself get happy and angry and sad and whichever, and it's just like people are probably looking at me like, that's just crazy. I'm like, no, it's not. That is what feeling alive feels like. The more you can experience, like, oh, I actually really hate my job, if that's your reality. It's only when you can acknowledge, like, I really hate my job, or I'm angry, or I'm betraying myself by forcing myself to go to this position I don't really like, then you can say, if I am so clear about what does not feel good in my life, do I give myself permission to explore what feels good? I did a really, really, really intensive training with Regina Thomas Howard. She's known as Mama Gina, and she's all about women empowerment. She's at the head of the School of Womenly Arts, and I did her pleasure coaching certification and just really learning how do we help women reconnect to their pleasure. Because the more you're in the pleasure, the less you'll want to be in that gut stuff that doesn't feel good. The
Yes.
easier it will be for you to recognize, oh my goodness, this is a no for me, and this is a yes for me. And I like to, with my clients, when there's always a moment of decision making. Sometimes we're not clear. Is this a yes or is this a no for me? So imagine there's a hell yes, and then there's an I don't think so, and then there's a hell no. Where are you on that continuum? And a lot of people are then able to be like, oh, right, that's like, it's definitely not a yes. Okay. All right. So let's start with that. Right. And then, like, what would be a yes?
Yeah.
And like, can you honor that anything that's not a hell yes or a yes is just like no, or I'll think about it, and be in that space for a while of maybe even not knowing, or recognizing, oh, wait, this is a yes and this is a hell yes, and giving yourself permission then to go for that, even if you don't know what's going to open up, or, sometimes it doesn't have to even be relevant to a career path. Sometimes it's just more about building your muscle of being in pleasure and enjoying your life.
It's really important to realize not to be afraid to seek that support, whether,
Yeah.
from a coach, a mentor, or a therapist. Sometimes we really need that outside perspective. You see it more clearly.
I still think about how I was having a conversation with a friend, and she was sharing with me. And at the end, like, I started laughing. I'm like, wow, you're really trying to turn your no into a yes. And I was able to really mirror that for her. Like, I'm really hearing you trying to justify moving forward with something that's a no for you. And I think that as women, we do that really, really, really often.
That's so true. And those are really great tips, especially in a world where we often feel like we're pressured to have everything figured out, especially as women.